come here in a spirit of solemnity and respect and to pay tribute to the Magdalenes. I think we're all familiar with the story of those, still for the most part, very anonymous women and girls. And as you know, this has been a matter of political commentary and pressure, and that will certainly continue to be the case until the apology that is due, the compensation and recompense that is due, is made to these women. But I think there's also a really important human part to this story, and today it really is an opportunity for us in a very personal way, in the run into International Women's Day, to acknowledge every woman, every girl, every Magdalene, their experiences, their suffering, their life story, which was for most people unknown until quite recently, and due to the very, very hard work of campaigners and family members. So I want to introduce Susan Lohan. Susan is from the Justice for the Magdalenes campaign group, and I want you to say a few words before we set off.
Thank you to all of you for coming here today, and for our politicians from the Dáil. It's a shame that more of them don't take an interest in this campaign. So Jim Smith, who's one of the vanguards of this campaign, Professor Jim Smith, has done a lot of research. He's prepared some background notes for me to just fill you in on the campaign and the astonishing saga behind some of the graves here, particularly the Hyde Park grave. So I hope you don't mind, I've got a bit to go through, so I'm just going to read through some of it. And there's a very nice poem at the end. So I'm here representing the Justice for Magdalenes group today. It's an advocacy group, and for the last 3 years we've pursued a campaign to bring about justice for all the women who spend time in the Magdalene laundries. And very importantly for me, for children born to some of those women. Now, we've called repeatedly on the state to offer an apology and provide redress to survivors of institutional abuse in the Magdalene laundries. We made an inquiry application to the Irish Human Rights Commission in 2010, and again to the United Nations Committee Against Torture, that's UNCAT, in 2011. Now, both of these very serious, august bodies published recommendations that the state provide redress and facilitate restorative justice for women who spent time in the laundries. To date, the state has refused to do so. It has established an independent interdepartmental committee chaired by Senator Martin Magdalenes to clarify state interaction with the laundries and to provide a narrative detailing such interaction, because of course the state is arguing that these were independent, private laundries. The state had no hand after part in that. Now, JFM, and particularly Jim Smith, has unearthed evidence disproving that theory, but it constantly gets kicked into touch, so now there's another committee. Now, it's important to remember, however, that no one in Ireland, not the state, the church, not the 4 religious congregations running these laundries, not the families, not society in general, have apologised to the women for the abuse they suffered. Now, the survivors today are ageing and vulnerable. Many of them have no education and training and are living in very straitened circumstances. They deserve an apology from state and church without any further delay, particularly whilst they're still alive and might be in a position to enjoy any compensation they would be paid. Now, we're gathering here today to lay graves on the Hyde Park Drumcondra grave, the Sean McDermott Street, Gloucester Street grave, and the much older Mecklenburg Street grave, which is that's the Memorial Cross one. And we remember them for so long, were forgotten by Irish society, and in remembering them, we afford them a measure of dignity in death that was too often denied to them in life. Some of these women died after a lifetime spent working without pay in laundries that were always commercial and for-profit enterprises. In fact, it might surprise you to know that one of the laundries actually carried out laundry for the Irish Army. So, very clear evidence of state involvement. Now, the nuns do not afford access to their post-1900 records, and strictly speaking now, we don't know how many women entered the laundries in the 20th century, where they came from, how they ended up there. and how long they stayed, and where they went, when they left, or if they died behind the convent walls, and where all of the women are buried. Uncertainty enables Irish society to edit these women out of our national story. Now, JFM has striven to provide some certainty and some answers. We know that in August 1993, the Sisters of Our Lady Charity of Refuge applied to the Department of the Environment to exhume 133 Magdalene women's bodies from St Mary's private graveyard, and that's Hyde Park in Condra, with the intention of first cremating and then reinterring the remains. Now, of the 133 names on the exhumation licence, death certificates were only available for 75, meaning that there was no death certificate for 58. We know that for 24 of the 58, the nuns could only supply quasi-religious names like Magdalene of Dolores, Magdalene of Lourdes, and no proper names. We know that the exhumation process had to be stopped when an additional 22 human remains were discovered, bringing the total to 155. Now, those remains were cremated prior to reinterment here at Glasnevin, despite a canon law which recommends burial of human remains. And of the 155 names on the headstone here in Glasnevin on the Hyde Park grave, only 27 correlate to names and dates given to the Department of the Environment. So imagine that's 130 people who are denied that dignity that Deputy MacDonald has spoken about. So JFM is seriously concerned that questions would be provided in relation to these particular remains. And the Garda Commissioner, in response to inquiries from JFM and in response to the late and great Mary Rafferty's inquiries made in 2003, provided the following explanation. So I'm reading here from the Garda statement. Garda inquiries reveal that the exhumations commenced on the 23rd of August 1993. The figure of 133 remains referenced in the application for the exhumation licence and was calculated on the basis of the existing crosses on the graves. In arriving at the figure of 133, it appears that no account was made to the fact that due to vandalism, other crosses on the graves had been removed. When the work of exhumation and reinterment began, it was discovered there were more remains than the 133 first identified by crosses on the graves, as having been buried in the private graveyard. Following the realisation that there were more remains buried in the plot, a further application was made to the Department of the Environment for an exhumation licence to cover the additional remains found. It appears that a general exhumation licence for the exhumation of all human remains within the private graveyard was granted. All the remains were removed by funeral undertakers and subsequently cremated. The preliminary indications provided to the Gardaí last April, that's 2010, suggest that the religious order followed all appropriate steps in registering the death of their residents home, and the very easy way that those women have been dismissed. I think that statement says it all. Now, it remains to be seen whether the work of the Interdepartmental Committee, that's the one chaired by Senator Martin McAleese, and in particular the committee's access to the records of the religious orders, whether they will shed additional light on those disturbing anomalies. JFM wants nothing more than a full and thorough accounting for each and every woman who entered these institutions, and particularly for the women who died behind the convent walls. The anomalies on the Hyde Park gravestone call into question the accuracy of all similar Magdalene gravestones across the country. The Magdalene grave at Bowramore Cemetery in Galway has no names listed on it at all. And in 2012, Galway's Magdalenes are denied the most basic tenet of dignity, a name on a gravestone. Now, today's event is not about making a political statement. It is about affording dignity to a group of women who in many cases were denied that dignity in life, and in the instances of those women at Hyde Park, denied the dignity of a final resting place. We abandoned them in the past, we cannot deliberately forget them in the present. As a society, we can and must do right by these women. And in closing now, I'm just going to read the lines of Patricia Brogan's poem, Make Visible the Tree, from her collection De Collage. Make visible the tree. This is the place of betrayal. Roll back the stones behind Madonna blue walls. Make visible the tree, above the percussion of engines and gloom of catacombs, through a glaze of prayer. Stumble of chanting, make visible the tree, its branches ragged with washed out linens of a bleached shroud. In this shattered landscape, sharpened tongues of sulphur yellow bulldozers sliced through wounds of blood-soaked generations. This is the place where Veronica Forsaken stares and stares at a blank towel. Thank you.
Very nice.
See that Magdalenes female.
It's actually done by an Irish theatre
people that can
and they
football.
So this is the story being told, and then have their children taken away from them, and then the children, the final indignity of that, the children are denied knowledge of their origins, and very importantly, denied knowledge of their family history. Again, I find it perverse that in this country we fought so long for independence, that we would do that to our own citizens. And I think as Mary Robinson identified the Irish diaspora, I think it's incumbent on our politicians and hopefully the current president to maybe identify Ireland's internal missing and disappeared, because that's what these women and their children and their legacy. Make this an annual event. And I really want to thank you all. I want to thank Sinn Féin and Deputy MacDonald in particular, and unfortunately Deputy O'Sullivan had to leave us already. But it's incumbent upon us to remember the women. And I think the most tragic thing that occurs to me and any of us here today who are mothers, these women had everything stripped away from them. Dignity, identity, education, employment, and then what greater crime could you carry out on a human being but to strip them of their children? And when we look around at, those that are blessed enough to have children, imagine that. And they have to go through their lives bearing that loss. And I can tell you, as somebody who, I run a helpline along with Claire McGettrick, and we get calls from women who are in the laundries or who are in mother and baby homes, and that pain stays with them. It stays with the children, rips away from them. And it is down to us to make good that very awful wrong. So thank you so much for coming today. I think Deputy MacDonald would like to say a few more words.
But just thank you, Susan, for speaking so eloquently and so honestly, and for advocating, all of you that advocate on behalf of the women and children from the Magdalenes launches, for their children, for the family, all of you who insist that their story be told and that the state and the church make good the damage that was done. I think we commend you wholeheartedly and admire you, and we're here to support you in any way that we can. And I agree, let's make this an annual event. Those that the state, the church, the powers that be would be more than happy to brush all of this onto the carpet. We're not going to let that happen. So thank you all for coming along. And, Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the first Sunday in March.
Yeah, we will. The first Sunday in March every year. And if I can just pick out one of my colleagues, of all of the colleagues that I love who work with me, but I have to pick out one, and her name is Anya Downs. And Anya has been, as you know, very active on this issue for a long time, works very closely with me, it's a great support on it, so well done, Anya. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you here next year. And I hope by next year we'll have measurable progress.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.